Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration and growth. Today I have the real pleasure to speak with a sales mentor. He's from Canada. He's also a speaker and an author and a fellow podcast host. So Chris Spurvey, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. I realize that your expertise is sales, which is something extremely important. Before I ask you a few questions about that, I want you to give us a brief background, your journey, maybe some key defining moments along that personal development journey of yours.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was a little break in our bandwidth there. Hopefully I'm coming across okay here.
I can hear you all right.
Yeah, I mean, I graduated from university in 1997, and I was an entrepreneur during my university days. I've kind of had entrepreneurship baked into my DNA from a very young age, just in observing my dad, who always desired to start a business, but because he kind of got into a traditional career path at a young age, failed to be able to jump out because he had a family to support and so on. So when I was in university, I started my first ever business back in the early 1990s. And you mentioned personal development. I remember being a guy in my class, my graduating class, giving me a box of tapes, Personal Power by Anthony Robbins. And it was on cassette tapes. And that's my first recollection of being exposed to the personal development kind of industry. And I dove into those and got myself up every morning at 5 a.m. and listened to the 30 days of programming and followed through on the exercises. And I've basically been a bit of I guess I'll call myself a personal development junkie to some extent ever since. If people are not they're maybe listening to the audio, so they don't see the video, but I have a bookshelf of quote unquote personal development books behind me. I do believe that we live in an infinite universe. We have immense potential at our fingertips. And the majority of us, including myself, including you, are being held back by a belief in what we think we are. And those beliefs are formed through our childhood and it's baked into our DNA. Some of it's been given to us by our parents. And so so my mission has really become, as I've moved along, to inspire and support and encourage people to make quantum leaps in their lives. And I've made multiple quantum leaps in my life. I do believe, and once you wind me up and get me going on this subject, I'll keep going. But I really believe that we can make leaps in our lives and that we don't necessarily have to buy in to this idea that we make incremental progress. We can choose tomorrow morning to make a big decision, which would enable a quantum leap in our lives. So anyway, maybe I'll pause there and just see if that gives you some food for thought or questioning. But as you can tell, I'm a big believer in personal development.
I like what you just said about the quantum leap, which in my mind is the exponential growth rather than the incremental. I think our mind works usually in an incremental way, and it's those beliefs that you started saying. That's actually my next question, and in particular, the beliefs that you realize that were holding you back. Especially, I'm referring to the negative beliefs about selling.
Yeah. So I totally. So when I think back to my childhood, a very clear memory for me was in the early 1980s when I would have been 11 or 12 years old. And my mom and dad were cooking dinner. And we as a family were sitting down to eat our Sunday dinner. And a knock came on the door, and it was the door-to-door salesman selling vacuum cleaners. And within seconds, he was in our house, and he was selling to my mom and dad. And I observed him basically take every objection that they put up. Number one, they weren't even thinking about buying a new vacuum before this man appeared. Number two, a $3,000 vacuum back in 1983 was a lot of money, right? And he had a response to every objection. And my mom and dad spent $3,000 in 1983, which is in today's dollars is 12 or 15,000. And then they thought about how to pay for it for the next 3 or 4 months, right? And that was my first exposure to sales. And I thought, so I kind of moved forward in my career then when I jumped out to be an entrepreneur and I had to sell. That image or that belief on the screen of my mind was front and center. So I failed miserably in sales initially because I thought it was something that you did to people versus something that you do in partnership with your customer. And it took a lot of falling down and picking myself back up to sit back and do a little bit of introspection and then realize, you know what, this is not how you do sales. I need to change my ways if I'm going to be effective, which I decided to do, and slowly but surely became a whole lot better. But that's the belief about selling that I initially had. And what I've learned in the last number of years, 3 or 4 years, is that almost everybody subconsciously is carrying around that image of sales. And that image of sales is what's ultimately holding people back from getting out there and offering their product or service in a powerful, effective, belief-driven way. And as a result of that, they're not getting the results in their business that they desire and deserve, right? So we do need to conquer this belief that sales is icky. This sales is something you do to people.
Yeah. Why do you think we have these stereotypes, these images about the negative? I mean, the term comes to mind, the cheesy salesperson. Why are these? Why do you think we have these kinds of stereotypes?
Well, I think it's because some of our earliest childhood exposures to sales are likely selling where you're being in. It's an intrusive form of selling, right? So whether it is the door-to-door salesman, which is gone, you don't have a whole lot of them anymore, or it's the used car salesman where you're going in and they're uneducated. They're not uneducated. I'll retract that. They're not polished in their approach. They haven't been trained to approach it from a human perspective. They're trying to do something to you versus something with you. Okay. And then also I think a lot of our early exposures to selling is the retail kind of environments where you go in, you're browsing stores, and within seconds you have a retail salesperson coming over to you and asking if you need help. And it's the feeling that we pick up at a young age that plants that image on the screen of our minds, right? So we're emotional beings, and the feeling, once it gets planted, it's very hard to change.
And how did you personally transcend these limiting beliefs?
I transcended it through some of the personal development techniques that I learned from initially people like Anthony Robbins, and then I became a huge follower of Bob Proctor, and stuff like developing a vision, which is it's a present tense story that I read every day, which tells me, which as I'm reading it, it's telling me that the vision is saying, I am now a effective win-win relationship seller. I am in partnership with my clients. When they see me, they smile. They look forward to seeing me and look forward to my conversations. And so this is a vision I wrote. Then I followed up that vision with some affirmations, which I read. And I just diligently, over a period of time, read the vision, read the affirmations. And then the other thing I did, I think you can go too far with the woo-woo stuff. You also got the practicality. So what I would notice as I change certain activities and approaches to selling, my results changed. And so I would every evening after a day of building my business, I would sit down and do a little bit of an inventory of things I did and the results I got. And I would just continue to do the things that worked and do less of the things that didn't work. And through pivoting through that process, I arrived at a sales process that generated good, consistent results and felt good for me. That's the most important piece. I felt good in my bones, talking to people in a manner that I honored them. I listened to them. I asked them questions which allowed more clarity for them. So your customer is the focus of the conversation versus you, the seller, being the focus.
Thank you. Let me ask you about those affirmations that you said, because it is some things that you just said are for me fundamentals of personal development. So affirming something to yourself so that it embeds into your subconscious and then it changes your behaviors eventually. But absolutely. In terms of the affirmations, as you said them, so would you read them every morning? Would you just read them aloud? Can you just be a little bit more specific with that? Because it's something that personally fascinates me.
Yeah, well, I've actually, I'll call it a ritual. My morning ritual has evolved over time. Initially, when I read about, I'll go back 20 years ago when I initially read about the idea of affirmations. I would just take my piece of paper and read them to myself. And I noticed a little bit of change. I noticed myself feeling better, and the feeling better resulted in more energy and emotion being put into what I did. And so those small changes initially just came from reading to myself the affirmation. Today, and if you'd like me to just dovetail into what my ritual looks like today, my ritual today is very, I sit down, I get myself in a relaxed position physically, but mentally as well. The analogy I'll use is I'll let if I look at my head as a snow globe, I'll let the snow fall down to the ground. And what I do then is I basically read my goal. Or my vision. I'm wanting to use the vision / goal, same thing. And then what I do is I have 3 or 4 pictures, and if people were looking at the video, I could even show you the pictures. I look at the pictures that represent my goal, and I will take my finger and I trace around the edges of the picture. And what that does is, to me, it's a very critical piece of the puzzle, because what it does, the tracing of my finger around the picture transposes my mind into the picture. And I'm smelling the ocean. I'm hearing the birds. I'm seeing, you know what I mean? I'm feeling the sand in my feet, and so on, right? So the tracing of the picture has been a huge multiplier for me. And basically then what happens, I notice as I'm reading and I'm tracing the picture, insights, inspirational ideas will come to the surface in terms of the how I'm going to achieve the goal. And what I do then is I take 10 minutes and I do believe ideas are like fish. They're like slippery fish. If we don't poke them, they're going to get away from us. So you need to write down the ideas. And then you start your day by just simply looking at the ideas and saying, which one am I going to act on today, right? And so the affirmation / vision is a ritual that I follow. It usually takes 10 to 12 minutes, sort of 2 to 3 minutes of that upfront stuff, and then 8 to 10 minutes of writing down my insights and planning out my day and so on. And then I just kickstart the day. And I've been following that ritual now for, say, 3 years, roughly. And I've made multiple quantum leaps as a result of that.
That's fascinating. I would love to, because you offered to show that picture. Do you mind just quickly showing that or sharing
just
that?
Hang on.
Yes, sure.
Just one sec.
Absolutely.
My journal was right here. Hang on.
it's I will share this with you that recently all this topic of affirmations, visualization, doing all those things to actually create your reality. You said the phrase woo-woo earlier, which I really don't like that at all, because I don't think there's woo-woo. Some people might see it like that, but the more science evolves, the more it actually proves that it's nothing woo-woo about it. It is science. The more you do it,
it is
your subconscious that will dictate the change in your behaviors.
Right. Well, yeah. So I really appreciate you saying that. When I said that's woo-woo, that's actually that's a limiting belief coming out of my mouth, because I wanted to ensure people didn't think I was too woo-woo. So I really appreciate you identifying that.
That's all right.
Yeah. Well, and I'll show you my pictures in a second. So you're absolutely right. There is science, and it's like science and theology, I guess. Both come together, and they say the same thing. We have at the base of our brains a reticular activating system. And so when we set an intention or we set a goal, when you're driving down the road and you've just bought a new vehicle, you're going to see 3 or 4 or 5 examples of that vehicle that you never saw prior to buying the vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's because we have a reticular activating system at the base of our brains, which basically filters into our lives things that we value, things that we are in alignment with where we want to go, and so on. And so by setting the goal and setting the intention, we begin to filter things into our lives, call it attraction, but the things were there. It's not really attraction, because the things were there. It's just we've drawn our attention to it by setting the goal, and then the whole idea of quantum physics. I mean, this whole idea of a quantum leap. I mean, atoms make jumps, molecular atoms. I mean, they make jumps from point A to point Z, skip all steps in between. We are made up of atoms, right? So what keeps us from making those leaps? What keeps us from making the leaps is the limiting beliefs in our brains.
Exactly.
Right? Anyway, I just really converted in you, obviously. So here's my journal.
Okay.
All right. So I'll sit down every morning, and this journal, by the way, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Price Pritchett. He wrote the book U Squared. This journal is the accompaniment to U Squared. U Squared has sold over 1 million copies, and the journal is something new out. So I've been using the journal. I went to Dallas and spent 2 days with Price in November. And I came home with a bunch of these journals. So I've started now using his journal, and I find it really good. But let me so here's on page number 6, I think it is, or sorry, 11. There's my vision. So I'll read that vision, right? Which includes my goal. It's written in the present tense, right? Waking up at 5 a.m. is such a delight. I sit on the side of the bed and feel the energy as it releases itself from my healthy, toned body. My revenues are exceeding X number of dollars. Jennifer and I, my wife, we've integrated health and wellness into our lives. I'm maintaining my ideal body weight of 215 pounds. I am 6'4". Money is flowing to my family and I in increasing quantities from multiple sources. I'm just sort of glancing. Jennifer and I are in our mountain cottage. We're surrounded by nature, blah, 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 blah. Right.
Do you read it aloud, Chris?
I read it aloud.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. So then when I'm finished reading it, I go to my pictures.
All right.
These are pictures that I've chosen, right? So there's my health picture. So I'll sit here and I'll look at it, I'll trace it, and I'll get into the picture, right? Here's my beach picture. I'm a huge hockey fan, so I love seeing the Toronto Maple Leafs. So here's my favorite team. There's my mountain cottage, right? There's me speaking in front of a group of people, etc. Right?
Exceptional. That's fantastic.
So I trace those pictures with my finger, and then I write out basically the insights that come to me for on the particular day, right? Anyway, here's my process. That's my ritual.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing, because I have a big personal interest in that, and I have been interviewing other people, and somehow the conversation turns into that. It's weird, but yeah, I find it
to you. It's your reticular activating system.
I think so. So I will rather abruptly bring back the conversation into sales, if I may. So I wanted to ask. You have a book, a best-selling book that is about cultivating the sales mindset. So could you share with us briefly how can one go about to cultivate the sales mindset if they want to? Apart from reading your book, of course, which I suppose it's a step.
Yeah. Of course, you can check out the book, but we've actually covered a little bit of it, So the book, the book is actually a narrative. It's my story, as I've kind of relayed on the beginning of this show, in terms of my journey to become more centered and happy and in my own skin as a salesman. And a sales professional, maybe that's the better word. Mm-hmm. So basically what the book does is it changes the image of sales from being a push approach to being a pull approach. And the book is really prescriptive around a lot of what we've covered so far, which is having a vision for your life and one of the critical ingredients maybe that I'll just mention is the product of a vision is self-motivation. And self-motivation is the most critical ingredient that I have learned to be successful. And maybe I'll even say I define success as not the arrival at the goal. Success is moving towards the goal. I think it was Earl Nightingale who defined success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal.
Yeah.
Or worthy ideal, I think was the word he used. And if you break that definition down, it's kind of interesting. Like the word worthy, many people, and me included, originally would say, am I worthy of the goal? I'm going to go after this goal. Am I worthy of that goal? But I think we need to frame it a little differently. Is the goal worthy of us? Because we only have one life. We only have so much time, unless you believe something different, and that's fine. But we only have one shot at this. Let's make this big, hairy, audacious, and let's make some big things happen. Why not? Unless you don't want to, but that's okay, and that's okay too, right? So success is the progressive realization of a goal. To achieve success, we need to be self-motivated. And self-motivated, what does that look like as a sales professional? It's about going out there with an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of expectancy, meaning we expect the best, right? We expect to win the deal. We expect to give good service to our clients. Going out with that attitude. And so self-motivation is a concoction of that attitude, sort of like a persistence, going out and doing the necessary activities to build up the pipeline so that you are always landing new clients, right? And too many of us are building businesses what we do is we land a client and then we focus solely on delivering the service to that client. And we don't realize that the activities we do in business development today are going to are what's going to generate the revenue in 3 to 6 months' time. So we really always have to be consistent. Another keyword around self-motivation, another characteristics of self-motivation is consistency. We need to be consistent in our business development activities. So And I don't know where I digressed maybe a little bit from your original question. But my book is really all about firing up that inner vision that results in self-motivation, that results in us going out there and doing whatever it takes to achieve our goals.
Mm-hmm. I liked very much something you said earlier about selling being something you do with people rather than doing it to people. And I think that's, for me, it's a very key takeaway from what you said, because there is that kind of limiting belief. I have it as well. I mean, I'm trying, I realize that block that I have, that that hurdle that I have with me selling, even if it is selling myself, not necessarily a product, something that about who I am. And it has taken me a while to understand that it is all about the other person. It's not about me.
Well, yeah. And if you'll just allow me, what's going through my head as I think about that, you have a story. You have traveled a road that no one else has traveled. There are people out there that haven't traveled the road you went down. Mm-hmm. And there are people out there that go to sleep at night wishing and dreaming and hoping they can travel down your path. So if they're going to bed at night not being able to sleep, they're feeling anxiety because they're not able to do what you have done, then it's actually a disservice. You're doing a disservice to that person by not actually selling to them. And what does that look like? What does selling look like? It's all it is a conversation. It's a diagnostic conversation. It's finding out where do you want to be in 2 or 3 or 5 years from now? Where are you presently? What bridges do we need to get over to bridge the gap between where you are today and where you are tomorrow? And having that conversation typically results in some action items. Mm-hmm. You as the seller take some action items and make sure the buyer has some action items, because when they get actively engaged in the buying process by doing something, you're far closer to arriving at them actually paying you as a customer than if you walked away doing all the actions and them just waiting for you to do those actions. Do you follow me? So a highly active, mutually engaging sales process is huge, right? So back to my main point, you're doing a disservice to the people that are out there if you're not out there promoting and selling your story and who you are and the bridges you've crossed, because there's lots of people out there looking to cross the same bridges.
Thank you. That's extraordinary, your message, and it is something personally I have only the last few years started to understand and actually share my message, because I was a very introvert person just not so long ago. 2-3 years ago, I wouldn't be doing that. There would be no way to speak with someone I don't know.
Yeah, well, now let me give. So there's been research done by Adam Grant, who wrote. I don't know what he wrote. He's a big American professor who's done a lot of research. The names of the books are not on the tip of my tongue. Adam Grant, he's worth looking up. He did a lot of research around the top sales people in the world, and he did, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is an introvert, a true introvert, and 10 is a true extrovert. The best salespeople are a 3.
Oh, really?
So if you're an introvert, I'd be willing to bet you're somewhere closer to a 3 than you realize, and you need to own that. And the actual word that's on it is an ambivert. So a 3 to 5 to 6 is considered an ambivert. And the reason I can guarantee you, the reason you can be a very powerful sales professional selling yourself is because you're a highly skilled tuner. And what that means is that you have a deep intuition, and you are good at asking questions. You're good at listening, and then you're good at solving the problems based on what you hear versus throwing up over people the solution without even knowing if there's a problem to solve, right? So I'd be willing to. You should own the fact that you're an introvert.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let me just ask you a couple of quick fire questions as well, if I may. If you could go back and meet your 20-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
Number one, begin very early to manage your money. Money is a phenomenal asset that can create a lot of freedom in your life to really, and what freedom does is it allows you to pursue your passion in a very big way. So at me at 20 years, I wish I had told myself that the money you save today can be used into the future. And it'll create a whole pile of less restrictions on you as you grow a family and so on, right? So manage money well. Did you ask for two?
I asked for one, but if you want to share it second,
no, okay, I'll leave it at one. I'll leave it at one.
Excellent. If you had a magic wand and you could change something in the world as it is today, what would that be?
These are phenomenal questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I could change it, I would, you know what? I would love to be able to blink my eyes and arrive at anywhere in the world and just experience other places in the world without having to go to airports and be going through airplanes and so on. So somehow, and I know it's not far down in the future, we'll be able to do something like that through the augmented reality and virtual reality and so on. But I don't know if it'll be the same. But I'd like to be able to teleport myself to all kinds of areas in the world and experience them. That's big on my list right now. I'm 46 and I want to see more of the world than I've seen so far.
That's
including Greece and including UK.
Outstanding. Chris, is there anything that you were hoping I would ask and I completely missed it?
No, we've covered a lot in a short period of time, and I think it's a product of you being a phenomenal interviewer and collaborator as well. You wind me up on this stuff and get me going. I'll go. I love this, and I love working with people one-on-one. So no, I think this has been great. I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. How can people connect with you, Chris?
They can go on my website, chrisspurvey.com, ChrisSpurvey.com. I'm sure you'll have show notes of some sort.
Absolutely.
I guess lastly, LinkedIn. I'm active on social media, but I've decided to go all in on LinkedIn. It's just been a phenomenal experience for me. I think it's the best platform out there. So look me up on LinkedIn and reach out, connect. I produce a lot of content on LinkedIn. A lot of these ideas I share very much on LinkedIn. So check me out there, and I'd love to connect.
That's great. I know that LinkedIn helped you with the release of your book as well. I read that it was a stepping stone.
Yeah, well, I finished writing my book, and I realized outside of my mom and dad, I had no one to buy it. So I got active on LinkedIn and began publishing articles and so on, and that led to my podcast and so on.
Awesome.
So LinkedIn's been great, a big part of my past.
Chris, I want to thank you very much for your time and for sharing your wisdom with me and with all of us today. I really appreciate you being here. Any parting words, anything you want to say for last?
What comes to mind is that a shark, in order to survive, needs to be moving forward. So every day, let's ask ourselves a question: what's the one thing we can do today, such that by doing it, we will move closer to our vision? And so let's move forward every day. And lastly, let's create a vision for our lives that motivates us to act and act powerfully.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. It's been a great time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate and review this podcast on iTunes, Spotify or Stitcher. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.